What is up, guys? Welcome to the Delta Omega Dynasty podcast. As always, I'm your boy Joey Medina, aka Carl Weezer 69, here to break down everything going on right here, right now in the Delta Omega Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Another week is in the books. Week 9 has come and gone. Playoff races are starting to heat up. And of course, with that comes interesting storylines along the way. I'm super pumped. I could barely get all those words out without messing up. Um, but yeah, let's just get into it. Let's go through week 9 scores and let's just go from here. Let's go, boys. Up first in the scores of week 9, we have the top scorer Lewis, who beats Jansen 144 to 100. 7 wins in a row for Riley as he topples Trevor 136 to 94. A surging Irv beats Tommy 132 to 77. Kyle gets back in the win column, defeating Dakota 88 to 76. I beat Liam 87 to 25. And last but certainly not least, Max beats Hunter in a barn burner show stopping game 49 to 45. So, where do we begin? Where do we begin? Well, I guess I got to ask you guys the question is where do you guys stand right now in the league? How are we feeling right now? When we look at the grand scheme of the league and who's in position to win, are we thinking are we thinking two or three teams can win it all? Or are we being a little more optimistic and thinking that five or six teams can win it all? I just want to know. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys think. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Um, but I do bring you this question um, for a specific reason. And for that, I will start by stating the obvious, the things that you guys know, like Dakota did in fact lose last week, bringing his 2022 season wins and loss total to 3-6. Um, and while technically no team has been mathematically eliminated yet from the playoffs, the hill or the mountain, whatever you want to call it, is getting steeper and steeper to climb every single week. Um, so what do we go from here, right? When we take a look at the teams across the league, all right, we have Hunter and Liam who need an undesired miracle to make it into the playoffs. Not going to happen. They don't want it to happen. I don't think it's possible for that to happen. So might as well not throw them out, but not include them for this point. We already talked about Dakota. 3-6 is going to be a tough hill to climb out of. And then you have Max, who is only one game out of the playoffs, but it's no secret that he's been packing it in, no pun intended, for weeks now, as he's been trying to lose actively. So those teams, I think it's safe to say are out of the playoff picture as of now. Um, but simple math, 4 teams out, 12 minus 4 is 8. Um, Glad I got that one right. 8 teams left in the playoff picture currently in the league. Um, Myself, Riley, Trevor, Jansen, Tommy, and Kyle being the current 6 in the playoffs. And then you have the 2 outsiders looking in Lewis and Irv. Um, so I bring you the question again is where do we stand right now? Which of those teams do you think can win it all? Um, so yeah, where do we stand? The bottom line is that the 2/3 of the league um, is in the playoff picture, playoff race, if you will, and the only 2 teams at the end of the day make any money. Now I get it. Third place makes their money back, gets a free year next year, but for all intents and purposes, we play this game not only for fun but for a little bit of monetary value, and only 2 teams make it, and that is turns into what 25% of the 8, so two out of 8. I think I can do that math. But who do we have? Who do you guys got? You know, who do you have? Who's gonna win? Um, that has remained to be seen, and it's very possible by now that some of you, me included, that are in the playoff picture, that are maybe towards the top end of the playoff race, um, maybe have started to look ahead. And I get it. A lot of games left to play. Bye weeks have not even been close to being determined yet. So it is hard to figure out who you might play. But at this point in the season, you probably have an idea about 3 or 4 teams that'll be around where you will be come playoff time, right? So naturally we're all human. We're looking ahead. It's like, what's our road to the playoffs? I would imagine I'm not the only one that's done that. Um, maybe you see where you are, where you can stand, what you might need in order to beat some of those teams to get you on to the next round. Um, but like I said, the bye weeks have yet to be determined. The playoffs have yet to be determined. So it is very hard to predict accurately who you might play in come playoff time. Um, but in terms of bye weeks, while we're on the subject, um, in the apartment conference for that bye week, we have myself and Riley, who have a 2 game lead um, over Kyle, the next closest, um, to get the bye. And it's not out of the realm of possibility, especially if Kyle beats me this week, um, that he can make a run for the bye week. But in all likelihood, it'll be me and Riley battling out for that bye week spot. And hopefully we'll get a chance to settle it in week 14, the last game of the year. Would be very exciting to watch that unfold for sure. I'm definitely rooting for that. And in the CTBNL, it is tricky. Trevor has the lead. Jansen has the same record. I'm thinking those 2 teams are in the lead for that conferences bye week. But things can change. Um, so what else we got? Anything shocking though? Unless anything shocking like that happens, you gotta think. And I'm not making it any assumptions. I'm just predicting that maybe the 4 teams vying for the bye weeks are Jansen, Trevor in the CTBNL, and then me and Riley in the apartment conference. Um, so when you factor that in, it kind of paints the playoff picture a little bit, right? Because you're left with 4 teams competing for the remaining 2 spots, right? You obviously have the 2 teams getting the bye, all right, which leaves the other 2 teams that didn't make the bye in there, um, potentially. So that's a total of 4, leaving 2 spots left to make the playoffs. Um, And I don't know, maybe you're one of those guys like Kyle brought up on the show last week that he said Jansen is the most likely current playoff team to miss the playoffs. If you want to include him into that, especially with this tough schedule, I want to say that he's got Tommy, Irv, me, Riley, Max to end of the year. Um, Maybe you throw him in there. And then even then, you've got 5 teams competing for 3 spots. Um, and I've already brought to your attention that me, Riley, and Trevor are probably in that safe comfort zone right now, barring anything, um, game changing, injury related that could knock us down a peg. Knock on wood for that. Um, but here we are. So we have Jansen, Kyle, Tommy, Lou, and Irv remaining. 3 teams in, 2 teams out. What's your guys' pick? I don't know. A better question, I guess, if you're struggling with the idea or the question, is are there any of those teams that you could think could win it all? Maybe so. I don't know. That's for you to decide. However, as far as my opinion goes, I think I need to see a little bit more. I do have a guess, um, but to help me maybe come to a better decision, is a perfect transition, perfect segue, whatever you want to call it, into our next segment, um, where we're going to go into the pros and cons of each playoff viable team. And when I say playoff viable, I mean not Dakota, not Max, not Hunter, not Liam, and nothing. You guys are tanking the right way. You guys will get your glory here before you know it. But for now, we're going to go through the playoff viable teams. We're gonna look at pros and cons, and we're gonna just see what it is. And as a disclaimer, some of these were very hard to come up with, as some of these teams are very very good, and the cons were not so easy to find. Um, so if you disagree, you disagree. I did my best to find some cons and some pros, both to help us maybe figure out who maybe could make a run, plus who has a better chance to make the playoffs, that kind of thing. So let's just get her going. I've explained it enough. We're going to start at the top at one and work our way down to number eight. For pros and cons, starting with my team, where we've got the pros. Obviously, most points in the league. This team is explosive. Every starter has put up 20 plus points at least once. And then maybe another pro for my team you could use is maybe some running back depth. And I know there's some teams that have more running back depth than me. I just don't think I'll ever be in a bind this season for running backs, as Deontay Foreman and is getting solid work with CMC's departure. Um, Jamal Williams is an excellent option if Swift still isn't 100%. Who else do I have? I have somebody else in there. Oh, and then Zeke, who maybe not won't get the workload that he's used to, but if I had to put him in, you never know. A touchdown makes his outing successful. So I do not mind the running back depth, and of course you have McCaffrey and Swift and Lenny to some degree in there as well. I think that could be a pro for this team, just for this year at least. As far as cons go, inconsistent quarterback play. And when I say inconsistent, I mean consistently mediocre quarterback play. Um, I have conditioned myself at this point in the season where if one of my quarterbacks, whether it be Trevor Lawrence or Tom Brady, whoever I started that week, if they put up 17 points or so, I'm calling that a dub. Um, and I realize it's not that bad of points, but I would prefer 25, 30 points, but it's not a perfect world. But that is definitely a weakness of this team, and that's no secret. Next con, lackluster receiving depth. And now this one was surprising because I thought that maybe with the amount of young wide receivers that I had, that maybe one of them would be a viable starter if I needed them. Um, of course, the Steelers have a rough quarterback situation, so Deontay Johnson has been a disappointment. Mooney is starting to trend in the right direction, but I don't think I would start him unless I absolutely had to. Elijah Moore has been a big baby, was complaining about targets. And what happens at year two when you're not an absolute stud? I mean, he's really good, like 700 receiving yards as a rookie is pretty solid, but that's no all pro bowl numbers. So he's getting the cold shoulder right now. Not really my fault, but I still believe in the talent. Um, but that is definitely a con if Cooper Cup or AJ Brown are hurt come playoff time. That'll be a big hole for this team. Um, and last con, we got a lack of second running back superstar. Um, Now, I know there's not many teams that have two incredible running backs in the league. Um, I kind of thought Swift, I mean, I knew he'd get hurt because he always gets hurt. Um, he's definitely capable of it. He just needs to get healthy and get put on the field. Um, Leonard has taken a step back this year as predicted as he's gotten a year older, and that Bucks offense isn't as good as it was last year. There's just Christian McCaffrey, and then there's a bunch of RB2 guys, which is a fine recipe for success, but it is uh, worth noting that there's only one superstar running back on this team right now. Um, Moving on to Riley, his pro 7 game winning streak, two top seven receivers, two top 12 running backs, and a top 10 quarterback. And then potential league winning depth. He's just got a lot of guys that are plug and play, high floor guys that could make some noise and help him out if he needed it. Simple as that. And then his cons, I have health. He does have good depth, And like I said, these are hard, especially like teams like Riley who are really really good to come up with cons. And I said health just because in terms of what he's looking for in the grand scheme of things to win the league, um, and whatnot. Um, you know, I think if he got a couple injuries, I especially at tight end, that is just going to be rough, and he probably won't win. So that's why I put health in there. I think he could still win with it potentially, but it is something to be concerned about potentially. But if health is one of your cons, then you're doing something right. So another con I had is potential for lower ceiling than you'd think. Now, this one I don't know about, and I'm trying to remember why I wrote it down. But I'm guessing he's got a couple touchdown dependent guys, and that's his last con, which is a touchdown dependent tight end like Zach Ertz, who without a touchdown probably gets you 5 points a week. And that might get it done, that might not. Um, Miles Sanders doesn't get in the end zone. What does his weeks look like? Does he still get 100 yards rushing? Maybe, maybe not. Um, I guess you could say that for any roster, though. Not worried about Devontae or Saquon or Diggs or even Kyler for that matter. They will put up some big numbers regardless. But some of the other players, maybe lower the ceiling more than you would think. But still, again, not too worried about that con. And then I already brought up touchdown pennant tight ends like Zach Ertz. Definitely Cole Kmet. Um, I'm not saying Zach Ertz is touchdown dependent, but if he has scored, I think in the last 4 games, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but which has really catapulted him into tight end 4, which I think is where he sits right now. But anyways, good cons to have. Um, those were hard to pick. Moving on to Trevor, pros top 10 or top two top 5. Wait, let me speak English correctly. 2 top 5 running backs. There we go. Um, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler are very good. Very, very, very good. Only thing keeping Trevor alive right now in this league right now. Um, Aaron Jones, Montgomery, Mostert all come out and give him some solid running back depth. And that's another pro for him. Makes my running back depth look like a weakness, but it's very much so a strength for Trevor. And then his final pro is monumental quarterback upside. Lamar Jackson is capable of putting up 40, 50 points a week. I know all too well, as in week 2 or week 3, I can't remember when I played Trevor. Um, Lamar dropped 40, and then I had little to no chance to win. So that is a huge pro for Trevor. As far as the cons, I have written down expiration date. And I think there's a lot of you that agree with me because of what happened in the off season. We went to the chat, or maybe we did power rankings on some Google form or something, but we did something that made Trevor reconsider his team, where he listed all of his running backs on the trade block, um, which allowed me to trade for Christian McCaffrey. And I'm just curious what if Trevor would do that again. Forget that he plays for the Niners, because I think that would be the kicker for him to do it. Um, it's more so of a what would this team look like with Christian McCaffrey right now? You got McCaffrey, Eckler, and Derrick Henry on this team, and my team. And as a competitor of Trevor's, my team is considerably worse. Uh, that's neither here nor there. That's just something I just thought of. But anyways, we did something that resulted in that to convince Trevor that maybe his team has an expiration date. And it does. I feel like it just does, because last year he went 12-1 and lost. I think he was hurt a lot, if I remember. But it just seems like maybe not this year, maybe not next year. Could be next week, could be next 2 years. This team has an expiration date of when it will fall off a cliff, because once Henry and once Eckler are done, Trevor's going to have to do some retooling, in my opinion. And that's just why I put the con in there. I just thought it was an interesting tidbit. It feels like this team is very good, which it is. It just feels like it won't be good for that long for whatever reason. Um, Next con, we have the tight end position, which is very bad, which I believe he still has Albert O and Robert Tunyon, which is not good, especially when you're facing other playoff teams with top five tight end options. You're looking at a positional disadvantage come playoff time that, might not be costly, but it is something to factor in, that he'll have to win some other positions. And with that being said, you also have uh, lack of upside for his receivers potentially, compared to some other teams. Yes, I get it. Debo's been hurt and he's got a lot of upside. Don't get me wrong. Um, it's more so of a, when you look at, for example, me or Riley, or even Kyle for that matter, the receivers are just way better. Jansen, I think too. I'd take his. Lou for sure. I can't believe I even skipped over him. He's just got like the fifth or sixth best wide receivers, if not worse, in the playoff picture right now. And so that's just a concern. The running back room might make up for it, but only time will tell. Moving on to Jansen, who comes in here at the four spot. Pro 6-3 record. The 6-1 start was huge. Gave him some leeway. He needs to pick up some wins in order to make the playoffs. I'm saying maybe 1 to 2 more wins out of 4 or 3 or 5 or however many games are left. I don't remember. It's week 10, so 5. Yeah, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 5 games left. I think he needs to win 2 games to make the playoffs. He has pretty good running back options as another pro. Patterson came back, scored 2 touchdowns. Chubb is a beast, and Cook, in all honesty, still looks like he's got a bit of juice left. Um, and then, of course, another pro is his young star receivers. I would imagine when he drafted them that he thought maybe they'd be better by this point in our Dynasty League, but they're still pretty solid. And CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf, who can put up anywhere from 10 to 25 points on a given week. I think that's a pro, even though there might be some better receiver tandems out there in the league. This isn't one to be overlooked. Um, Moving on to the cons for Jansen, it's a low ceiling. It's in the name. We've said it before on the show. Um, I don't know. It just seems like there's some teams that have a little more umph, a little more point scoring abilities, and that's why it's on the con. I think he's only scored over 100 twice, and one of them was this week when he lost by 40. Maybe it was 3. Who knows? I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but the ceiling nonetheless has been low for Jansen this year. The points have not been there. Another con for him is the schedule. Like I said before, Tommy, Irv, me, Riley, Max, and the year. Um, it'll be tough. It will be tough for sure. And my last con for him is the scare factor is lower than some. And when you look at Jansen's roster, it has a plenty of good players, and it's one of those rosters that looks complete. It's got 2 good running backs, 2 good receivers, a really good quarterback, a really good tight end, and then kicker and defense or whatever. And then the flex, he's got a decent enough player. It's one of those teams that has like no holes on it, that isn't as scary as the other teams with no holes on it, if that makes sense, right? And that's what I'm talking about. The scare factor is lower than some. And just to be more specific, the scare factor is like when you open Sleeper up, you go to the matchup tab, you look across at your opponent, and you're like, bam, 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 bam down the line. There's not a break. You get stud after stud after stud. Um, and a team that has virtually no holes like Jansen's, it's just not as scary as other teams, maybe like a Lou or a Riley or a me or something like that, where you're looking across and you're like, crap, this is going to be a long, long Sunday. But that's just a subjective one. But those are the cons. Um, Moving on to Tommy, who's on the 5 spot, the pros, elite quarterback and running back potential, very solid fantasy production from his starters. Um, and young guys that can turn it on from any given week. Obviously, he'd love to have Jonathan Taylor play. Um, he's been hurt, which has been rough. Of course, Josh Allen is now hurt too. Hopefully, that's not too bad. If it is, then he might have to think about going in a different direction, in all honesty, especially with week 10 coming up right now. As far as stalled fantasy production, he's put up some points. I'm not going to lie. He's put up 80, 90, even 120 a couple times this week. So definitely has shown to be explosive in the past. Um, and then young guys like Chris Olave and Damian Pierce that he has um, could maybe explode and maybe help him down the line. Tommy's team is one of those teams that I just cannot decide is it good or is it mid, right? And I think nobody really knows because I think his rookies could really take over down the stretch and make him a really good team potentially, or injuries could derail it. And no, we're back at he's the second most win now team currently right now in terms of the number of assets he has in terms of the quality of them. So maybe he might have to go in a different direction. As far as cons go, like I said, depth, injuries. I played him with injuries, and it was not good. He was playing a bunch of scrubs. Um, he's a little bit Bills dependent, and that's probably one of the best teams to be dependent on. But if they're not on, good luck winning, right? But that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened that much so far this year, so I'm not too worried about that. Um, and we already touched on this. The health and the whole depth issue is just, if he's not healthy, this team probably is the worst team in the playoff viable options, and that's just facts, I think. Moving on to Kyle, current six seed. Pros, wide receivers, Tyreek, Amon Ra, Garrett Wilson have all been great so far. He's got some high floor running backs, which is always good because points, points, points is all that matters. Um, Followed by, he's got some potential late season bloomers. Hawkinson can find his role in Minnesota. Um, who else does he have? Mondre could just keep rolling. Um, who other I gotta take a look at Kyle's roster wherever my phone is. But anyways, yeah. So potential high floor running backs like Ramondre and Josh Jacobs. I don't even know if you want to call him high floor because he's also got a high ceiling as well. Trying to think who else Kyle has. AJ Dillon. I'm not sure if Aaron Jones, if he's healthy. I don't know. I feel like I heard on a podcast or something that Aaron Jones was hurt. Maybe he takes over. Gino is playing well. Maybe Tony finds his way with the Chiefs. Maybe not. Fryermuth, yeah, all those guys. Also, Justin Herbert is very nice. That should be a pro for him as well. As far as cons go, point scoring at times. I want to say he's scored over 100. I guess I can pull it up real quick, but he scored over 102 times, and that was week 1 and week 2. And hasn't scored yet. So explosiveness and point scoring has been a concern. Um, and then when you just look at his roster as a whole, like I get it. It is a very solid roster, top to bottom. A lot of contributors, a lot of good players, but there's not anyone elite. I mean, Jacobs had been elite for a while. I think he's running back 6 right now. Yeah, he is. Um, Tyreek is wide receiver 1, so that's pretty good. Outside of those two guys, you got a lot of high floor guys, low ceiling guys that maybe hinders him come playoff time. And that's just my opinion. But I think, like I said, he's got some potential for those guys that kind of are just like meh, that are just go insane at the end of the year. Like he's got plenty of candidates for that. Um, just in my opinion. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but that's just it. I just think that he's just not scored a lot of points at times, and I just don't. I think there's better rosters out there, frankly, and that's just what I'm concerned about with his team. Moving on to our out of playoff teams, currently, starting with Lou, the pros, second in points forward, budding superstars in Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne at running back, and then an absolute elite receiving core with Justin Jefferson and Jalen Waddle. What is his cons? And now this one was maybe the hardest of all of them. He's one of his cons. He's currently out of the playoffs. That's just how it is. Um, Another con, lack of high ceiling running back depth. And when I say running back depth, I'm not, of course, talking to the two guys I just referred to as budding superstars, but knock on wood, if one of them goes down, does he have to start Khalil Herbert, Jeff Wilson? That just doesn't bode well for playoffs, right? Not in my opinion, at least. And my final con of him is just not much else, right? Like, what else do you want me to say? He puts up a crap ton of points. He puts up, he's got an elite roster, no holes. I didn't even mention Goddard in the pros. Uh, what else do you want me to say? This is a very very good team. I'm hoping they can. I do want to see Lou in the playoffs because I think he's put in the work to deserve it. It's just he's a scary roster. Moving on to our last team in the playoff picture is Irv. His pros, solid starting lineup. We've seen it. The Bengals stack Mike Evans and who's his other receiver? It's somebody good. Oh my gosh, I know he has Jamar Chase, but he's hurt. But who's his starter right now? He has like another Hall of Famer. Yeah, Hopkins. That's right. Um, so yeah, and then Fields, of course, is budding as well. He's becoming a fantasy monster too, which is very beneficial for Irv. I like the upside, and that's a pro for this team, especially with the Bengals that are looking like they're starting to hit stride. Hopefully, they'll be getting Jamar Chase here back soon. Um, and this team is just absolutely explosive. It puts up over 100 a lot. I need to check that out to see how much. One, two, three, four, five, 6 out of 9 weeks out of scoring 100, including the last 4 weeks. This team is hot. This team is scoring. This team is winning. Cons depth. You know, not a lot of depth pieces out there. It looks like he's got Kenyon Drake, which is nice. I didn't notice that. Renfro hasn't been that good, has he? Nope, not at all. Wide receiver, 115. Um, there's just not a lot of guys on his bench that I'm loving. So if he doesn't stay healthy, that's something to watch. He's Bengals dependent, which we all knew. But when the Bengals don't play well, he has shown an ability to score points still. It's just the upside gets limited if the Bengals are down, obviously. And then he has a couple starters that are boom or bust. I'm not sure if he still starts Devin Singletary or not, but he's definitely boom or bust. And I'm not even sure if he's boomed in a while. And then he's got Kyle Pitts, who's the ultimate boomer bust player, who, if they bust at the wrong time, could not be beneficial to his playoff and championship chances. So we'll leave it at that. That's the pros and cons of each playoff team. Sorry if there's a lot that you don't disagree or if you don't agree with. But that's just what I kind of saw in about 20 minutes of research. Uh, so here's the question again: is like, who do you have now? Now that we've laid that all up on the table. After reading that, personally, I'm kind of thinking Lou and Irv might ride the wave all the way to the playoffs and knock Tommy and Kyle out. But only time will tell for that one. I'm very excited to see how this one ends up. Uh, while we're on the subject of playoff standings, let us take a look at the updated playoff standings for week 10 coming up. 1 second. Here we go. As you can see, same thing. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Same thing as last week. I made it and I updated it. Only thing I added was I gained this tab right here. Games behind first, just for seating purposes. I honestly should probably do 2 conferences and maybe I'll incorporate that next week. But as you can see, you've got 7-2 for Riley and myself, 6-3 for Trev and Jansen, 5-4 for Tommy and Kyle, Lou, Irv, and Max, who are all 1 game back at 4 and 5. Dakota at 3 and 6, Hunter at 2 and 7, and Liam at 1 and 8. The point differential here as well, so you don't have to do your own subtraction. Um, so yeah, we looked at that. Very cool. 3 teams are 1 game back. A lot of these teams are playing some of these teams, so keep your eye on that, and maybe we'll have some changes next week. As far as playoff implication games for the rest of the year, Kyle versus Joey 1 versus 6 matchup. Tommy versus Jansen 4 versus 5 matchup. Irv versus Trevor 3 versus 8 matchup. Like these are the best we can get this week, and some of them are very good. Jansen and Tommy, and we'll get to the week 10 games here in a little bit. But very good game. I'm very excited for. Um, Perfect. So yeah, you can look at that, pause it if you want to look at it longer. But we're gonna move on. Um, we're gonna move on to a segment that I haven't brought back in a while, and I said I was gonna do it more. I just forgot about it. But what we're gonna do a little edition of winners and losers of the week, starting with winner number 1 of week 9 is Riley, who is on a league leading 7 game win streak with a demolishing win over number 3 ranked Trevor. Riley's team is really, really good, in case I haven't made that clear up to this point in the podcast, and it will be for years to come. Um, I'd watch out for this team. And add one thing is, um, what a move. What a move. I didn't really get a chance to talk about the Devonte Adams trade so far. I mean, I maybe mentioned it briefly, but just what a move. Um, Definitely a league winning move. I could definitely see it. Riley could definitely win this year, next year, the year after, and the year after that. Would not be surprised. Well done, Riley. You get some credit. You get some credit. Moving on to loser number 1 is Jansen, who has lost 2 in a row following a 6-1 start. Jansen does, in fact, find himself in the playoff race, obviously. And while he might be leading the playoff race, if you want to call it that for now, um, he could definitely find himself in a little bit of a conundrum if he doesn't win this week. I don't want to run through the schedule again, but this game against Tommy has to be must win, or else he might be in jeopardy of missing the playoffs. Um, so yeah, he comes in at loser number 1 this week. Now there's no particular order. 1 is not better than 3. It's just 3 losers out of order and with 3 winners out of order. Winner number 2 is Kyle, and I'll tell you why. His game against Dakota was as must win as it gets, and he did. He won it. He snapped a 4 game skid. He got back in the win column. Good for you, Kyle. Um, Kyle's team is showing it can win again. I thought maybe forgot and maybe would never learn again potentially, but it seems like when he plays comparable lineups, um, the odds are in his favor a little bit more. But like I said, if you put on points on Kyle, this is where I have concerns. Now, time will tell whether Kyle can keep up with some of the top tier teams currently in the league. But make no mistake about it, if he does get into the playoffs, he has a tough road remaining. But if he does get in, this team will be battle tested as and might be a team to be reckoned with. Because I'm thinking if he gets out of the regular season into the playoffs, he's got to be putting up some big numbers, and I'm thinking that's when he can do some damage. Um, so that's what I'll say about that one. Moving on to loser number 2 of the week, which is Liam. Of course, this had to be mentioned, but 25 points is a pretty remarkable feat in 1 week. Um, he could have been a winner this week, depending on his just because of his team's current motives. but I do have to say one thing. Joe Mixon doubled his entire lineup score, and that is just all I'll say about that. Like 52 for Mixon, 25 for Liam's entire roster. That's something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. Moving on to winner number 3, who is Lewis, who continues to walk through opponents over the last few weeks. Lou is in great position to make the playoffs as he really controls his own destiny, with the second most points scored in the league and a lineup with virtually no holes in it. Another one to watch out for, boys. I think Lou could bring it home this year as well. And finally, loser number three is Tommy. Tommy got blown out by Irv and suffered a very untimely loss. Tommy's team did give ground to both Lou and Irv, who both won this week. Um, and he's creating a crazy end of the season playoff race between himself, um, Kyle, Lewis, Irv, and maybe Jansen. Maybe my voice got all squeaky like that. Maybe Jansen. So yeah, those are the winners and losers of the week. Let's do our updated tier list. Give me a second to share my screen. Alrighty, here we go. Here we go. So here we are. As you look at the updated tier list, not much has changed. Tommy slid from playoff probable to playoff hopeful. Jansen sits alone for now in the playoff probable tier. Excuse me again. Um, in all reality, I've got Jansen kind of like on this line between playoff probables and playoff hopefuls because I think he's a step above with the extra win than these four teams. But I don't think he's as probable as this tier maybe makes him seem. Um, so yeah, watch out for this one to be changed in the next couple months. You have Riley, me, and Trevor still remaining on championship contenders. Yeah, Trevor lost to Riley bad last week, but I'm still not out on him yet. Um, I still think he can put it together. Yeah, I think he still can win the league potentially. I'm starting to lose a little faith, but I'm not going to put it past him with those running backs. Um, Yeah, Dakota and Max as we go into the maybe next year tab are as about as dictionary picture definite. I don't know. You know the old saying. It's like you looked at a dictionary, there'd be a picture of you. It's Max and Dakota in the maybe next year dictionary tab. I know I didn't probably do a good job explaining that, but um, yeah, Max and Dakota have been making moves to get assets, and yeah, it seems like next year at least will be the move for them. And then of course you have Hunter and Liam who put up 100 or who put up 70 points together. It's safe to say that Bijan and Gibbs, welcome to your new team. Welcome to your new team. So yeah, you can there's not much to look at on the tier list, but not much has changed. This is what I currently see fit right now. Back to where we're going. Oh, here we go. All right. So now that we've done the tier list, let us go on to the week 10 games. And yes, we are ranking them again. But before that, last week we went 4-2. Riley and Hunter ruined my chance at a perfect week. Probably bad on me for picking Trevor, and I should have stuck with Max. I should have stuck with Max. But that brings the season total to 33-21 on the season. 12 games above 500. We'll take it. Better than 12 games under 500, that's for sure. But let us get on to the week 10 games and let us rank them. Um, Up first, as always, well, not, I guess, the second time, not as always, we do have the Little Stinker game of the week, which is seeming like a coveted spot on the show because you guys seem to remember it, which is good. But for this week in week 10, we have none other than Riley versus Hunter, the 2 versus 11 game. Um, it will earn the spot of Little Stinger Game of the Week because Hunter's team, in all honesty, should offer little to no resistance to Riley's incredible team. And it should notch his eighth win in a row. Notable buys. I didn't have anything that notable for Riley, and Hunter has T. Higgins on buy. And so what's at stake? So with the Riley win, Riley is 8-2, does his part in staying in the bye week race with myself. Likewise, Hunter does his part to help him get closer to the number one pick, at least safe and secure in the top two pick race as well. Um, Sorry, I didn't probably say that right, but um, anyways, both if Riley wins, both these teams do their jobs. It's a good way to look at it for what they want. And if Hunter wins, shock and awe is at stake, as Hunter would give up another game to Liam for the number one pick. Um, and I would imagine Riley will be sadly singing in the shower is as the winning streak would have come to an end against the 11 seed. My prediction: Riley wins big, 113-57. Number five on our Week 10 game rankings is Lewis versus Liam. This is a 7 versus 12 matchup, and Lewis should have his way in this one. He's on fire right now, and Liam is no bucket of water. Um, no, 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 really any bias this week for them both. So what's at stake? With the Lewis win, Lewis gets to 500 and puts immense pressure on Kyle and Tommy to win their games as he owns the points forward tiebreaker on them both. Um, Liam would fall to 1-9 and still have the number one pick. This is a win-win for both teams, just like the Riley and Hunter game. But um, yeah, this is that'll be it. That'll be it. Um, it will be a anticlimactic Norman Weed tribe battle, to say the least. So what's at stake if Liam wins? The world will end. Prediction: Lou Big 108-46. Um, week 10's number 4 game of the week is Dakota versus Max. Now, this is where I think the games start to really get interesting as the 9-10 matchup falls at the 4 spot. Um, Notable buys: Dakota has Mark Andrews and Max has Michael Carter and Devin Duvernay. Dakota also has Justin Tucker, but I don't really want to put a kicker on notable buys, even though it is Justin Tucker. So what's at stake? Well, safe to say a top 3 pick is at stake. As you know, in all likelihood, as these two are the upper echelon of the teams out of the playoff picture. The other one is likely to pick 4 this year. So that's what's on the line. An extra bump up in pick. Um, as far as prediction goes, um, as hard as it is to win in the league, it might be harder to lose in the league when you're playing teams towards the bottom of the talent pool of the, I don't know, the less skillful teams is a good way to put it. But for that reason, I expect Dakota to put up more points than Max, who hasn't scored over 75 points in 3 weeks. I'll take Dakota 74-62. Coming in at the 3 spot for the game of the week is myself versus Kyle. This 1-6 battle is at 3. Another must win game for Kyle, who could find himself outside of the playoffs with a loss. Um, on the flip side, I would need this win in order to stay on pace with Riley on the top of the apartment conference standings and still have a chance for the bye. Notable buys: I'm pretty much at full strength. Kyle has James Robinson, Garrett Wilson, and Ramondre Stevenson on bye, which isn't great. So what is at stake with a Joey win? 7 game win streak would improve to 8-2. Likely still top on the standings unless I get outscored by like 50 by Riley. Kyle would fall to 5-5, and with Lou playing Liam, likely gets jumped in the playoff standings. And if Kyle wins, Kyle remains in the playoffs with a 6-5 record, while I would fall to 7-3, and I would most likely concede the top spot in not only the apartment standings, but maybe even the top spot in the power rankings. Now, I could have already lost it as they haven't been released yet for this week, but um, I think for sure if Kyle wins and Riley wins, I will be at best number 2 in the power rankings. Um, as far as prediction goes, I'm at full strength. Kyle is not. Um, and without Ramondre and without James Robinson, I think he's got to start Pacheco, which I could see it. Classic Kyle, him blowing up this week for absolutely no reason, just because it's his only option. But um, barring that, I think it clears all doubt with those bye weeks that I should probably pull out with the win. So I'm going to rock with my team 119-94 over Kyle's. On to number two in the number two game of the week, I should say, is Trevor versus Irv. This is an interesting battle between a 6-3 Trevor and a 4-5 Irv. A win for Irv is absolutely huge for his playoff life, and Trevor needs a win to help him secure a potential bye week. And you know what happens if Trevor loses? He's 6-4. Maybe you start to think that he might be in a little trouble unless he can start winning some games. Who knows? Notable buys. Trevor has Lamar on buy, and Irv has the Bengals. So what's at stake? Well, like I said, potentially Irv's playoff life, depending on the outcome of Kyle Lewis and Tommy's games. For Trevor, the possibility of a bye week with a win could be coupled by potential playoff questions with a loss to Irv, who wouldn't have the Bengals this week. Prediction: the bye is brutal for Irv, but that's what happens when you get the stack. That's the game you play. Um, and I think that might be the difference. So I think I got Trev 98-89. He can make me eat my words on that one. I just know it. But I'll rock with you, Trev. You've been in my championship contenders for a while. You're gonna be this is gonna be the return on my investment right here. I've got a good feeling. Sorry. Moving on. Finally, the Delta Omega Dynasty League game of the week is none other than Jansen versus Tommy. This is a 4-5 matchup, and I think it's an easy choice for game of the week. It has plenty of playoff implications depending on how this one ends. Could take place. Notable buys. Tommy has Damian Harris. Jansen's pretty much at full strength. Um, what is at stake? With a Tommy win, he will improve to 6-4. Unless he beats Jansen by 48. He will remain third in the division. Jansen will fall to 6-4 with the Tommy win, bringing into question whether his team will make the playoffs at all. With the brutal schedule that I put up so much in the script with Irv, me, and Riley as his next three games after this one. And so, what happens if Jansen wins? Jansen will improve into 7-3 and could be in play for the bye, depending on Trevor. Tommy would fall to 5-5, opening the door for teams like Lou and Irv, I should say, to jump him for the playoff spot. Well, as far as prediction goes, this is a big game. It could determine the fate of Tommy's team right here on the spot. Bottom line here is the winner has a bit of wiggle room when it comes to the playoffs, whereas the loser might have a hard time maintaining their current position and maybe even maintaining their spot in the playoffs. By weeks, not that much of a concern in this one. Um, would be very nice for Tommy to have JT back for this one. Um, I don't know. For that being said, Josh Allen's been a little hurt. JT maybe is coming back. I don't know. But that's just a lot of questions. And I'm going to rock with Jansen 95-87 over Tommy. So that'll do it for week 10 preview. Good luck, everybody. This playoff race is getting very, very tight. Um, and I'll see you all again next week to recap week 10 and look forward to week 11 right here on the Delta Omega Dynasty podcast. See you later, guys.